Hey, how is ya? My name is Gus and welcome to Gus's Garage. I've decided to create this YouTube channel to capture the work that I'm doing on my project cars as a bit of a reference to look back on the work that I've done, and I guess to showcase the skills that I've gained being a tradie diesel fitter. I've currently got 3 project cars on the go, so I'll quickly run you through what they are and what I'm planning to do with them. The Tanner, she's a 1978 model HZ. I just bought that from my uncle out at Monto late last year, paid 15 grand for it. It come on Centerline Auto Drags. I've since sold those, and it's got no engine in it. Was originally running a 350, and then he'd put a 400 cubic inch Chev that was stroked and blown. Hence the big hole in the bonnet. I'm going to put my 350 Chev out of my ski boat in it that I was rebuilding. Hillman Motors have done all the machine work for me. It's an 85 model 4-bolt mains block. I've rebuilt the heads. They're all still wrapped in plastic. I've got the parts all ready to go for it. Put it back together. So I've just purchased a 400 cubic inch Chev for the boat. It's a 75 model 2-bolt main block. So if that block's any good, I'll be rebuilding that. The Tonner's got a WB Statesman front on it. I'm thinking about selling that front end. I'd like to put a Kingswood or a Premier front on it. I've already got another bonnet ready for it. Paint presents well, looks good in photos, but if you get a bit closer and have a proper look, there's the clear's peeling off it. There's little dents here and there in it. There's rust starting to come out of the cab now. Tops of the doors there and the gutter. There's a bit of rust in the bottom of the doors. There's also some rust in the sill. It's gonna need repairing. It's got a GDS dash in it and some racing buckets with harnesses. Also has the original seat belts in it. I'd like to put some bucket seats out of a H series, but I'm not sure if they'll fit in the floor because it's had a larger transmission tunnel welded into it. I have to go over all that work, make sure it's all compliant. I'll take that Monster Taco off the dash. It's got a ZF 6-speed manual box. They were found in the VN Group A Commodores. Got a high-rise manifold that was originally on the 350. Set up with NOS. Light and flywheel, brass button clutch, MSD ignition, some extractors. It is running a 9-inch diff with billet axles that's locked. Some axle tramp bars under it. The reason I sold the Centerline Auto Drags was the rears were way too wide. They were 15 by 10 with a 3.5 inch backspace, and they hung way out the sides, so the track was way too wide. I'm looking at some 17 inch US Bandit wheels, or GDS style looking wheel. And I'll be cutting these mud guards off, the fiberglass, and probably be ordering some from Mr. Mudguard, the steel guard, a bit narrower. I'll make it flush with the side of the tray. The tray originally had a timber floor in it, it's now got an aluminium floor. I would like to put a timber floor back in it and build a storage compartment under the front of it for a spare wheel. Set up with a drop tank with an electric fuel pump. Bit more rust there, same as the other side. That's where the NOS is hiding. I'll have to remove all that. There's a bit of a dent in the door there. I'm actually thinking about changing the colour of it. I'm not sure what that orange is. I've got to spray the bonnet that I've got for it, and if I put another front end on it, I'll have to spray that. Then once the rust repairs are done, that'll all need painting. So I like the orange in the VE Commodore's the Wildfire. Thinking about doing it that colour. So the car's still currently registered. I'm going to keep the rego on it while I'm working on it. I'm going to need an engineer to go over it, check over the work that's been done to it. I want to get it mod plated and 100% street legal so I can drive it around and not get hassled in it. This old girl, she's a 1961 FB Holden. Dad's had it sitting in his shed for about 25 plus years. He said it's too big of a project for him and he was never going to do anything with it, so I've acquired it now. And I've always had a picture in my head how I want this car to look. He bought it off an old bloke in Gladstone. I think he paid about $900 for it. I still remember the day we went and picked it up. Loaded it up on the car trailer. I steered it onto the trailer and we towed it back home to Monto. It's got a really solid body in it, there's hardly any rust. The old bloke that Dad purchased it off was going to restore it back to factory. He'd rebuilt the old 138 grey motor in it. I've got a bit different plans for it now. I'm going to build a pro street style car. So I've got a black 308 for it. That was in an early Commodore. I bought the whole car running and driving for $150 years ago. It was full of rust, so I dumped the body and kept that motor. So I've bought a HR disc brake front end for that conversion. Got the ball joint suspension in it. The original FB EKs were Kingpin. I'm going to sell the HR disc brake setup and the stub axles and put HQ in it so I can get the HQ stud pattern. I just found this gearbox for sale and bought it. It's a V6 T5 Borg Warner. It's out of a VN VR Commodore. It's got the adaptive plate on it, M21 bell housing and the clutch. It's all set up, ready to bolt onto the 308. And I'm looking at putting a rear-mounted rack and pinion steering out of an early Commodore from V6 conversions on that HR crossmember. I have to take the outrigger off the FB front end and put it on the HR. I'm also looking for a FB bonnet bar. That's the EK one. FB seemed hard to come by. A few dents here and there in it. Someone's had to go up bogging them. Floors are really good in this ute. It's hardly any rust in it. There's a little bit in the front left-hand corner, I think. I want to put a billet collapsible steering column in it. Then I'll be buying a wiring kit and just rewiring the whole car. Heap of parts in the back here. The wheel tubs are fairly dented up from being used as a work ute. So I'm going to cut those tubs out and I want to mini tub it. So weld some mini tubs in. Also purchased a 9-inch diff housing for it, coming out of a HR Holden. It should be the same width as FBEK and it should bolt straight in the back of this ute. It's got a center with it as well, 3.5 gears, it's mini spilled. I want to weld up all those tonneau cover hook holes. I'm going to need to put a chassis strengthening kit in it. So this one's going to be the long-term project. I'm going to be pretty excited to see this ute on the road. Not sure about colour yet. Always pictured a pearl, dark blue, purple colour. But I also like the original blues. And I'd like to put some World Drag Light wheels on it. I've always dreamt of seeing this car in Street Machine magazine. It's one of my goals that I've always wanted to do. So I'd love to see it featured, or at least in Reader's Ride or something in that magazine one day. What I've got here is a 1994 Series 1 R33 Skyline. It's factory colour, factory turbo, RB25. I bought the car in 2018 off a young fella in Harvey Bay. Paid $5,000 for it, which was a lot at the time because it didn't run, but they're worth a fortune now. I sold my S13 Sylvia and regretted it, so I still got a love for the import, so I bought this. It's the classic example of young dickheads who should have their fingers chopped off and never be allowed to touch a car again. It wasn't until I got it home that I realised how much of a mess this car was. There was vacuum leaks, it was being slapped together really poorly, turbo was blowing up, nothing was done up properly, there was bolts broken, bolts stripped, bolts sheared off on the clutch pressure plate. It was a bloody mess. It's got tan coilovers in it, and it's got some adjustable arms in the suspension. It's got a really nice interior in it. It's really clean, but I've pulled it all apart, so I'm going through all the wiring in it. It's testing my skills, my wiring skills. There's so much wiring in these cars. I had to get another engine harness for it because the other one had been chopped up so bad. It had mobiliser, central locking, alarm, all kinds of things piggybacked off the body harness. I've cut all of it out. It's all in the back. I've gone through and I've been patching up all the harnesses. Just trying to fix up the mess they'd made. They'd twitched wires together, hadn't soldered them. They weren't insulated properly. There's scotch locks everywhere. So I've gone through, checking everything. I'm surprised this car actually never burnt. It was that bad. I'll slowly go through and get it all sorted. It wasn't until I got it home that I noticed something a bit funny about this car. When I was buying the new pedal pads, the brake pedals wired, because this car was actually a factory auto. It's been manual converted. So I've got a manual pedal assembly to go into it. I've pulled the engine and gearbox out of it. I'm gonna rebuild the engine. I'm not gonna go too crazy with it. I'm hoping to make about 350, 400 horsepower at the wheels. It's got a big front mount intercooler on it. Had a forward facing intake plenum. I'd like to put the factory one back on it, set it all up with the heaters and everything working properly. Might put something like a GT35 turbo on it with a high mount manifold. I've got a Nistune computer for it, Z32 airflow meter. So this one's turned into a bit bigger project than I'd hoped for. The end goal is to get these cars out to some events and have some fun with them, such as Rocky Nats, Power Cruise, Bunaraby Drags, and just document the journey along the way. The cars are going to be worked on as my budget allows, so progress will be slow. There's going to be a fair bit of trial and error. I'm going to try and do most of the work myself. So I don't know much about bodywork, but I'm going to give it a crack. And that's half the fun in learning, gaining new skills. So hopefully I'll catch you out there.